Hey everyone, my name is Nathan, and welcome to Hail, and welcome to Alfred Hitchcock month. If you weren't aware, the whole entire month of August is devoted to Alfred Hitchcock on my channel. He was born on August 13th, and as he is my favorite director of all time, I devote the whole month to watching his movies, to talking about his movies on the channel. If you're just getting started with the month, there are plenty to look forward to. If it's at the end of the month, there's plenty for you to watch. Either way, welcome to this video. Today, I'm going to be talking about movies that you thought were directed by Alfred Hitchcock, but they're actually not. Now, with this video, I want to throw out there that I don't mean to discredit any filmmaker that made these movies because they deserve all the praise. This is really just a fun video saying that when I watch these movies, to me, they feel like a Hitchcock film. These are movies that had to meet a certain criteria in my mind. It's not just like any black and white movie that one scene reminds me of Hitchcock, so okay, we're gonna throw it on a list. I should also clarify that these are movies specifically made during the time period that he was making movies. So a movie made in 2010 won't make it on the list. Really, any movie made before he died or before his last movie, which was Family Plot in the 70s. When I'm watching an Alfred Hitchcock movie, there are very specific things that I feel, especially a real Hitchcock movie. A Hitchcock movie that gave him the nickname Master of Suspense. I chose 11 movies that actually fit specific criteria. I had 4 criteria items: suspense, a twist, dark humor, and music. Specifically music that drives the suspense or that drives the movie to move forward. Really, if the movie hit at least one of these items, then I added it to the list. I will be sharing them in alphabetical order. The first one I'm talking about is 1962's Cape Fear. This checks off suspense and music. Bernard Herrmann was the composer for this film, and so it's kind of obvious that it had to get a check for that. There are plenty of scenes where it's very similar to what Alfred Hitchcock would do, where he lets the audience know what is happening, but the characters in the movie, they are not aware of what's happening. So I don't want to spoil Cape Fear for you, but I just want to say the ending scene, there are certain things that happen towards the end of Cape Fear that we as a viewer, we know they're happening because we know what both characters are up to. However, both characters don't know what the other are up to. And so it builds for suspense when you see one character moving forward with their plan and the other character not knowing about the plan. Plus, there are plenty of suspenseful moments in other scenes. It's just overall a very well done Hitchcockian, non-Hitchcock movie. Next movie on the list fits all the categories. It is Charade. This is probably the movie that you hear cited most often as a Hitchcock movie when it's not directed by him at all. It has plenty of twists. In fact, probably the movie with the most twists I've ever seen. Either that or one that I'll mention later on this list. Has a lot of suspense, it has great soundtrack, and there's some dark humor in it as well. Charade also has Cary Grant, a frequent collaborator with Alfred Hitchcock, and so seeing him in a movie that feels like a Hitchcock film just makes me even more convinced that it is a Hitchcock film, although it definitely isn't. With all of that and even more, this is screaming Hitchcock. Next up, I have Diabolique, which really fits the category of suspense and twists. This is funny to include on this list because this was actually a movie that heavily inspired Hitchcock to eventually make Psycho and to even make Vertigo. It was a movie that he wanted to direct, but he lost out on the bidding by minutes. So that alone is a reason to compare it to Hitchcock because it was something that we knew he wanted to make and he wasn't able to. But then the final product, it's a French horror film. It really does scream Hitchcock with the suspense, the things that you know that the other characters don't know, and even the things that you don't know and you're very uncertain about. Is it a ghost story? Is it not? Like, what is this movie? You'll have to watch to find out, but I think you'll agree that it definitely feels like an Alfred Hitchcock movie. Next up, I have 1944's Double Indemnity, directed by Billy Wilder. Now, this one isn't as much of a Hitchcock movie as other movies on this list. However, even if you read my review for it on Letterboxd when I watched it for the first time, I wrote down that it felt like a Hitchcock noir film. I think it's because it feels similar to movies such as Strangers on a Train or even Dial M for Murder, especially Dial M for Murder, where one character is trying to get rid of another character. It's ironic because Dial M for Murder came out after Double Indemnity, but it's the same principle where it just feels like something that Hitchcock would want to direct. Next up is Sidney Lumet's Failsafe. I think the biggest thing going for this movie is the suspense. The entire movie you are wondering how it's going to end. There's a problem at hand and you want to know how it is going to be fixed. For that, it gets that title of a movie that feels like Hitchcock film that actually isn't one. Next up, I have Gaslight. This movie has Ingrid Bergman, which was also a frequent collaborator with Alfred Hitchcock, starring in 3 different films with him. This movie has a good twist. It also has plenty of suspense. There's a particular scene that feels like it's right out of a Hitchcock movie where someone finds some hidden items that they weren't supposed to find, and they only have a few seconds to look through them. And you know that the other character is coming closer and closer to finding them. And so you're looking at your screen and you're screaming, get out, go away, they're coming. And that's exactly what a Hitchcock movie would do. And so for that, Gaslight gets a mention. 1940's The Lady from Shanghai also gets a mention. This one isn't screaming Alfred Hitchcock, however, it does have some suspense to it. And towards the end, it has some very eerie camera styles, the way that it's very close to the faces, and there's a scene at the end where you're in a house of mirrors. It just feels like Hitchcock in the sense that it's a bit unsettling and there is some suspense in it too. My next movie is 1951's A Place in the Sun. This was a movie that going into it, I was completely expecting a romance film between Elizabeth Taylor and Montgomery Clift. And while I did get that, there's a whole entire added on factor of suspense, one that I was not expecting. Montgomery Clift starred in an Alfred Hitchcock movie, I confess, and he was great in that movie. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. But on top of that, there's a twist that I wasn't expecting that happens around the halfway mark of the movie. And with that twist, there was plenty of suspense leading up to it. For that, it makes the list. Next up, I have Carol Reed's 1949 film, The Third Man. The Third Man has Joseph Cotten, who starred in 2 different Alfred Hitchcock movies. So that, for one, is a little shout out there. But also, it has a man showing up in Vienna to visit his friend. And right when he gets there, he finds out that his friend actually died. So the whole movie is finding out about, okay, did my friend actually die? Or is this a setup? Like, what is happening and why are people lying to me? You are questioning, you're wondering what's going to happen next. And it definitely has some twists along the way, which make it feel very much so like an Alfred Hitchcock film. My penultimate movie is 1967's Wait Until Dark, starring Audrey Hepburn. It's really funny. So I was talking with a family member yesterday at a family reunion about old movies, and we were talking about, oddly enough, Charade and Wait Until Dark. And both of those, she was shocked when I told her that they weren't directed by Alfred Hitchcock. And it just kind of rests my case that they feel like Alfred Hitchcock movies. The biggest selling point for Wait Until Dark is absolutely the twists and the suspense. That's the common theme among all of these movies because that's just really what screams the Hitchcock film. With Wait Until Dark, it's all about Audrey Hepburn, who is a blind woman living at home, and she is robbed because unbeknownst to her, she has something that the robbers want. And the fact that she doesn't know it makes it even more suspenseful because she's not expecting the robbers or anything. And so there are certain suspenseful scenes where you see the robbers in the house, but she doesn't know that they are in there. And so it makes it very suspenseful, very creepy, edge of your seat material too. And finally, I want to highlight Witness for the Prosecution, another movie directed by Billy Wilder. This movie is getting highlighted for, you guessed it, the suspense and the twist. If there's one movie that has more twists than Charade, it is Witness for the Prosecution, because man, this one has plenty of twists, and all very enjoyable twists too. There isn't really anything that happens where I'm like, okay, I didn't like that direction it went in. And the crazy thing is, it veers away from the original novel written by Agatha Christie too, but it still works really well. So for the twists, I really like that. In addition to that, it's a courtroom drama, which doesn't scream suspense right off the bat. However, as the movie unfolds, it definitely is suspenseful because you want to know what's going to happen next. Is the case going to be won? Are they going to find out that this man is innocent? How is this going to play out? You want to know, and for that, Witness for the Prosecution feels like a Hitchcock film. There are plenty of more movies out there, I'm sure, that feel like Alfred Hitchcock movies. If there are ones that you specifically want to shout out, leave them in the comments below. I'd love to hear about them. But remember the criteria, it has to be a movie that came out before Alfred Hitchcock stopped making movies. I hope you guys enjoyed my picks today. I hope it also helped you find out some other movies if you like Alfred Hitchcock. Hopefully this will help you discover some more movies that you'll like even more. Either way, thank you so much for watching, everyone. Stay tuned for the next Alfred Hitchcock video. Until then, hope you have a great day.